Hello. Hi guys. Hi guys. Thank you for joining the live stream. I hope the audio is coming fine. No M Shastri. I could not check any links as of yet because I've been reading something or the other the whole day. Wait, इसको क्या हो गया अभी? Yeah, thank God. Let's start today. Actually, today's chapter is we are going to discuss more than one chapter, hopefully, but they are on Chinachara, specifically China, specifically Tibet, all of those things. But more interestingly, which is the best part of today, is the first chapter we are going to discuss is the chapter itself is a bit of a recap on last day's chapter because it's called Notes on chapter 6 or 7, whichever. But it is basically the chapter we discussed last night. So it's going to be a great recap for us, hopefully. I don't know what's the contents of the chapter, but it's called Notes to chapter 6. So let's start. Yeah, everything seems to be fine. Okay. Yeah, let's start, guys. So, I have referred to the Vedic and Agamic texts. I have referred to the Vedic and Agamic stands in Indian Dharma. I wish to add some weighty remarks made by the well-known Vedantic monthly, the Prabuddha Bharata. This is in Mayavati, UP, July 1914. They were elicited by the publication of Arthur Avalon, meaning this authors. They were elicited by the publication of Arthur Avalon's Principles of Tantra. Okay, so he's referring to himself, okay, because even back then he was sometimes writing under his original name of Sir John Woodruff, and sometimes he was writing under the pen name of Arthur Avalon. Okay, something's acting up in my mic stand. Let me fix this. So here he's talking about Arthur Avalon as if it's a different person, but in fact he's talking about himself only. That's funny. Hello. Yeah. Hi, Abhay. Namaskar. Some days are just bad for technical difficulties. Yeah, the audio is coming fine, right? I don't know what's happening. अरे इसको क्या हुआ आज अचानक? Finally, I hope. Let's see if it stays. They were elicited by the publication of Arthur Avalon's Principles of Tantra. After pointing out that a vindication of the Tantras rebounds directly to the benefit of Hinduism as a whole, for Tantrikism in its real sense, because Tantrikism in its real sense is nothing but the Vedic religion struggling with wonderful success to reassert itself amidst all those new problems of religious life. What an interesting sentence. Okay, listen to this claim. After pointing out that a vindication of the Tantras rebounds directly to the benefit of Hinduism as a whole, because Tantrikism in its real sense is nothing but the Vedic religion struggling with wonderful success to reassert itself amidst all those new problems of religious life and discipline which historical events and developments have thrust upon it. Okay, so he's saying that Tantrikism is a sign that Vedic religion's victory has been sanctioned. Basically, it's now visible in front of our eyes that Vedic religion has survived through all of the challenges that it has faced over the years and eras and generations, and the result is Tantrikism. That's an interesting claim. Shail Sharma, hi. Abhay saying, hi, in train going to Ram Janmabhoomi. Arey baapre, nice. Bad network, won't be able to view it stream regularly for a few days. Oh, that is kind of unfortunate, but great for your psyche, your consciousness. It's not great that you are going to miss my streams. It's great that you are on the way to a great place. Congratulations. So, discipline with Tantrikism in its real sense is nothing but the Vedic religion struggling with wonderful success to reassert itself amidst all those new problems of religious life and discipline which historical events and developments have thrust upon it. And after referring to the introduction to that work, the author of the review wrote as follows. In this new publication, the most noteworthy feature of this new introduction he has written for the Tantra Tattva is his appreciative representation of the orthodox views about the antiquity and the importance of the Tantras, and it is impossible to overestimate the value of this representation. Because hitherto, so far, all theories about the origin and the importance of the Tantras have been more or less prejudiced by a wrong bias against Tantrikism, which some of its own later sinister developments were calculated to create. This bias has made almost every such theory read either like a condemnation or an apology. कि either देखो ऐसा है कि since that things got screwed up, therefore please don't consider us bad as etc. But and otherwise it's a complete criticism. All investigation being thus disqualified, the true history of Tantrikism has not yet been written, and we find cultured people mostly inclined either to the view that Tantrikism originally branched off from the Buddhistic Mahayana or Vajrayana as a cult of some corrupted and self-deluded monastics, or to the view that it was the inevitable dowry, odious commingling of the Vedas and Vedanta with Buddhistic corruption, so-called, or with the so-called non-Aryan barbarity, is perfectly inadequate to explain all the all-pervading influence which the Tantras exert on our present-day religious life. Here it is not any hesitating compromise that we have got before us to explain, but a bold of organic synthesis, a legitimate resentment of the Vedic culture for the solution of not resentment, a legitimate restatement of the Vedic culture for the solution of new problems and new difficulties which signalized the dawn of a new age. In tracing the evolution of Hinduism, modern historians take a blind leap from Vedic ritualism direct to Buddhism, as if to conclude that all those newly formed communities with which India had been swarming all over since the close of the fateful era of the Kurukshetra war, and to which was denied the right of Vedic sacrifices, the monopoly of the higher threefold castes of pure orthodox descent, were going all the time without any religious ministrations. These Aryanized communities, we must remember, were actually swamping the Vedic orthodoxy, which was already gradually dwindling down to a helpless minority in all its scattered centers of influence, and was just awaiting the final blow to be dealt by the rise of Buddhism. Thus, the growth of these new communities and their occupation of the whole land constituted a mighty event that had been silently taking place in India on the outskirts of the daily shrinking orthodoxy of Vedic ritualism, long before Buddhism appeared on the field. And this momentous event our modern historians fail to take due notice of. Either it may be because of a curious blindness of self-complacency, or because of the dazzle which the sudden triumph of Buddhism and the overwhelming mass of historical evidence left by it create before their eyes. The traditional Kali Yuga dates from the rise of these communities, and the Vedic religious culture of the preceding Yuga underwent a wonderful transformation, along with a wonderful attempt it made to Aryanize these rising communities. The amalgamation, the accommodation, the collaboration. History has so far understood and read speaks of the Brahmins of the Buddhistic age, their growing alienation from the Jnana Kanda or the Upanishadic wisdom, their impotency to save the orthodox Vedic communities from the encroachments of the non-Vedic hordes and races, their ever-deepening religious formalism and social exclusiveness. But this history is silent on the marvelous feats which the Upanishadic sects of Anchorites were silently performing on the outskirts of the strictly Vedic community, with the object of Aryanizing the new India that was rising over the ashes of the Kurukshetra conflagration. What an interesting new perspective. This is almost sociological, a bit of historical writing. This new India was not strictly Vedic like the India of the bygone ages, for it could not claim the religious ministrations of the orthodox Vedic Brahmins and could not therefore perform yagyas like the latter. The question therefore is as to how this new India became gradually Aryanized, because Aryanization is essentially, जो कि कॉमीज बोलते हैं संस्कृताइजेशन, for Aryanization is essentially a spiritual process. ये तो थोड़ा जख्म हो गया कॉमीज के लिए, द्रविडियंस के लिए. Aryanization is essentially a spiritual process consisting in absorbing new communities of men into the fold of the Vedic religion. Absolutely true. The Vedic ritualism that prevailed in those days was powerless, we have seen, to do anything for these new communities springing up all over the country. Therefore, we are obliged to turn to the only other factor in the Vedic religion besides the Karmakanda for an explanation of those changes which the Vedic religion wrought, WROUGHT, wrought in the rising communities in order to Aryanize them. The Upanishads represent the Jnana Kanda of the Vedic religion. Okay, the Upanishads represent the Gyan Kanda of the Vedic religion, and if we study all of them, we find that not only the earliest ritualism of yajnas was philosophized upon the earlier Upanishads, but the foundation for a few and no less elaborate ritualism was fully laid in many of the later Upanishads. For example, we study in these Upanishads how the philosophy of Pancha Upasana, the fivefold worship, in case of vis-a-vis the worship of Shiva, Devi, Sun, Ganesha, and Vishnu, was developed out of the mystery of the Pranava, Om. This philosophy cannot be dismissed as a post-Buddhistic interpolation, seeing that some features of the same philosophy can be clearly traced even in the Brahmanas. For example, the discourse about the conception of Shiva. Here, therefore, in some of the later Upanishads, we find, okay, this was a very important point though. Another thing that will piss off a lot of Ambedkarites. This philosophy of Pancha Upasana, he's saying, cannot be dismissed as a post-Buddhistic interpolation because some features of the same philosophy can be clearly traced even in the Brahmanas. For example, the discourse about the conception of Shiva. Here, therefore, in some of the later Upanishads, we find recorded attempts of the pre-Buddhistic recluses of the forest to elaborate a post-Vedic ritualism out of the doctrine of the Pranava and the Vedic theory of yogic practices. Here in these Upanishads, we find how the Bija mantras and the Sat Chakra of the Tantras were being originally developed, because on the Pranava or Udgita had been founded a special learning and a school of philosophy from the very earliest ages, and some of the spinal centers of yogic meditation had been dwelt upon in the earliest Upanishads and corresponding Brahmanas. The Upakaranas of tantric worship, namely such material adjuncts as grass, leaves, water, and so on, were most apparently adopted from Vedic worship along with their appropriate incantations, meaning the mantras. So even from the Brahmanas and the Upanishads stand out in clear relief a system of spiritual discipline which we would unhesitatingly classify as tantric, having at its core the Panchopasana, and around it a fair round of rituals and rites consisting of Bija mantras and Vedic incantations, proper meditative processes, and proper manipulation of sacred adjuncts of worship adopted from the Vedic rites. This may be regarded as the earliest configuration which Tantrikism had on the this may be regarded as the earliest configuration which Tantrikism had on the eve of those silent but mighty social upheavals through which the Aryanization of vast and increasing multitudes of new races proceeded in pre-Buddhistic India, and which had their culmination in the eventful centuries of the Buddhistic coup de grace. Now, this pre-Buddhistic Tantrikism, perhaps then recognized as the Vedic Panchopasana, could not have contributed at all to the creation of a new India, had it remained confined completely within the limits of monastic sects. This is very important, and hence, actually, Hinduism is beyond any monastic sects, any monastic sect, or even the monastic life, and hence the words of the Shankaracharyas are therefore not the equivalent of a papal authority. But like Jainism, this Panchaupasana went forth all over the country to bring ultra-Vedic communities under its spiritual ministrations. Even if we inquire carefully into the social conditions obtaining in the strictly Vedic ages, we find that there was always an extended wing of the Aryanized society where the purely Vedic Karmakanda could not be promulgated, but where the molding influence of Vedic ideals worked through the development of suitable spiritual activities. It is always to the Jnanakanda and the monastic votaries thereof that the Vedic religion owed its wonderful expansiveness and its progressive self-adaptability. And every religious development within the Vedic fold but outside the ritualism of Homer sacrifices is traceable to the spiritual wisdom of the all renouncing forest recluses. This quote unquote forest wisdom was most forcibly brought into requisition when, after the Kurukshetra, a new age was dawning with the onrush and upheaval of non Aryan and semi Aryan races all over India, an echo of which may be found in that story of the Mahabharata where Arjuna fails to use his Gandhiva to save his proteges from the robbery of the non Aryan hordes. The greatest problem of the pre Buddhistic ages was the Aryanization of the new India that rose and surged furiously from every side against the fast dwindling centers of the old Vedic orthodoxy, struggling hard but in vain by social enactments to guard its perilous insulations. But for those religious movements, such as those of the Bhagavatas, Shaktas, Sauryas, Shaivas, Ganapatyas, and Jainas, that tackled this problem of Aryanization most successfully, all that the Vedic orthodoxy stood for in real sense would have gradually perished without trace. Interesting. We are discussing exact that particular era when these pre-Vedic areas got brought into the fold, and which basically gave birth to Hinduism as we know it today. These movements, especially the 5 cults of Vedic worship, took up many of the non Aryan races and cast their life in the mold of the Vedic spiritual ideal. Minimizing in this way, minimizing what? The gulf, the disagreements, the differences, etc. Ignoring the differences, looking for an unity in diversity. Minimizing in this way the gulf that existed between them and the Vedic orthodoxy, and thereby rendering possible their gradual amalgamation. This is the word I keep using. Now finally it has been used here as well. And where this task remained unfulfilled, okay? And where this task remained unfulfilled owing to the mold proving too narrow, still to fit into the अगर कुछ जगह पे वो Vedic style is too narrow for the non Vedic community, then what happens? Unfulfilled owing to the mold proving too narrow still to fit into the sort of life which some non-Aryan races or communities lived, there it remained for Buddhism to solve the problem of Aryanization in due time. But still we must remember that by the time Buddhism made its appearance, the pre-Buddhistic phase of Tantric worship had already established itself in India so widely, had already established itself in India so widely and so firmly, okay? Even before Buddhism became famous, Tantric worship had already established itself in India so widely and so firmly that instead of dislodging it by its impetuous onset, all the force of which, by the by, was mainly spent on the tattering orthodoxy of Vedic ritualism, Buddhism was itself swallowed up within 3 or 4 centuries by its perhaps least suspected opponent of this Tantric worship, and then wonderfully transformed and ejected on the arena as the Mahayana. This would piss off Ambedkarite so much. Probably Mahayana Buddhists would not get angry with this account. The publication of these 2 volumes is an event of great interest and importance. The religious beliefs of the modern Hindus have been represented to English readers from various points of view, but the peculiar mold into which they have been sought to be cast in comparatively modern centuries has not received adequate attention. The exponents of the religion of modern Hindus take cognizance more of the matter and source of their beliefs than the change from they have been undergoing through the many centuries. The volumes under review, as well as other publications brought out by Arthur Avalon, this author, serve to carry this important question of form to such a prominence as almost makes it obligatory for every exhaustive exposition of Hindu doctrines in future to acknowledge and discriminate in them the formative influences of the Tantric restatement. In the Tantra Tattva, the presentation and vindication of the Hindu religious beliefs and practices avowedly and closely followed the methodology of the Tantras. And the learned Pandit has fully succeeded in establishing the fact that what lies beneath these beliefs and practices is not mere prejudice or superstition, but a system of profound philosophy based on the Vedas. Every student of modern Hinduism should acquaint himself with this, namely its immediate background of tantric philosophy and ritualism. The Hindu religious consciousness is like a mighty Ganges emerging from the Himalayas of Vedic wisdom, receiving tributaries and sending out branch streams at many points in its course. And though the nature of the current, its color, velocity, or uses may vary at different places, the Ganges is the same Ganges whether at Hardwar, Allahabad, or Calcutta. The stream is not only one, but it has also its one main channel in spite of all the many tributaries and branches. And the whole of the stream is sacred, though different sects may choose special points and confluences as of special sanctity to themselves, deriving inspiration thence for their special sectarian developments. Now, though the rise of tantric philosophy and ritualism created in former times new currents and backwaters along the stream of Hinduism, it was essentially an important occurrence in the mainstream and channel. And instead of producing a permanent bifurcation in that stream, it coalesced with it. The accommodation, the amalgamation, coloring and renovating more or less the whole tenor of the Hindu religious consciousness. As a result, we find tantric thought and sentiment equally operative in the extreme metaphysical wing of Hinduism as well as in its lower matter-of-fact phases. This actual permeation of Hindu religious consciousness by tantric thought and sentiment should receive the fullest recognition at the hands of every up-to-date exponent. Permeation of Hindu religious consciousness by tantric thought. His predecessors of former generations might have to strengthen their advocacy of tantric doctrines by joining issue with the advocates of particular phase of Hindu religion and philosophy. But the present epoch, the present era in the history of our religious consciousness is preeminently an era of wonderful synthetic mood of thought and sentiment, which is gradually pervading the Hindu religious consciousness ever since Sri Ramakrishna Paramhansa embodied in himself its immediate possibilities, to find in the literature that is being so admirably provided for English readers by Arthur Avalon, the author we are reading, an occasional tendency to use tantric doctrines as weapons for combating certain phases of Hindu belief and practice. This tendency seems to betray quite a wrong standpoint in the study of the Tantras. Their relation to other scriptures. Okay, this tendency seems to betray quite a wrong standpoint in the study of the Tantras, their relation to other scriptures, and their real historical significance. All that is being corrected by Arthur Avalon. This was the review. Now, an interesting chapter begins. It's called "Is Shakti Force?" Okay, again it's buffering. I don't know why. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. It wasn't happening for so many days. It's all of a sudden happening again today. I don't know what's the problem. Is there anything I can do about it? No, all seems fine on my side. Bunk. Let me know if it is buffering too much. Okay, is Shakti force? Oh, it's fine. It's telling me that YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Okay. There are some persons who have thought and still think that Shakti means force and that the worship of Shakti is the worship of force. Thus, Keshav Chandra Sen, the Brahmo person. Keshav Chandra Sen wrote, quote, "For centuries ago, the Shaktas gave way before the Bhaktas. Chaitanya's army proved invincible and carried all Bengal captive. Even today, his gospel of love rules as a living force, though his followers have considerably declined both in faith and in morals. Just the reverse of this we find in England and other European countries. There the Shaktas are driving the Bhaktas out of the field. Look at the Huxleys, the Tyndalls and the Spencers of the day. What are they but Shaktas, worshippers of Shakti or force? The only deity they adore, if they at all adore one, is the prime force of the universe. To it, they offer dry homage or homage. Surely then, the scientists and materialists of the day are a sect of Shakti worshippers who are chasing away the true Christian devotees who adored the god of love. Alas, for European Vaishnavas, they are retreating before the advancing millions of Western Shaktas. He is equating everything with Europe, okay? We sincerely trust, however, the discomfiture of devotion and bhakti will be only for a time, and that a Chaitanya will yet arise in the West, crush the Shaktas who only recognize force as deity and are sunk in carnality and voluptuousness, and lead natures into the loving faith, spirituality, simplicity, and rapturous devotion of the Vaishnava. End quote. No, this is still his quote going on. Yeah. So now Keshav Chandra Sen is quoting Professor Monier Williams from his book Hinduism. He also called it a doctrine of force. Recently, the poet Rabindranath Tagore has given the authority of his great name to this error. After pointing out that egoism is the price paid for the fact of existence, and that the whole universe is assisting in the desire that the I should be, he says that man has viewed this desire in two different ways, either as a whim of creative power or a joyous self-expression of creative love. Is the fact then of his being, he asks, is the fact then of his being a revealment of force or of love? Those who hold to the first view, that it is a revealment of force, those who hold the first view must also, he thinks, Rabindranath thinks, they must also recognize conflict as inevitable and eternal, because it's an action of it's a matter of force. For according to them, peace and love are but a precarious coat of armor within which the weak seek shelter, whereas that which the timid anathematize as unrighteousness, that alone is the road to success. What is the road to success? That which the timid anathematize as unrighteousness. Wow. Where the meek, the nice people, the cute, soft people, which they categorize as unrighteousness, so meaning aggressiveness, etc., force, etc., that is the only road to success. In case of people who believe that force is the way to go. The pride of prosperity, now he is quoting Rabindranath. The pride of prosperity, this is Keshav Chandra Sen's quote only. The pride of prosperity throws man's mind outwards, and the misery and insult of destitution draws man's hungering desires likewise outwards. Pravritti and Nivritti. These two conditions alike leave man unashamed to place above all other gods Shakti, the deity of power, the cruel one, whose right hand wields the weapon of guile. In the politics of Europe, drunk with power, we see the worship of Shakti. So this is it, the interpretation of Shakti by Keshav Chandra Sen. In the same way, the poet says that in the days of their political disruption, Rabindranath says that in the days of their political disruption, the cowed and downtrodden Indian people, through the mouths of their poets, sang the praises of the same Shakti. The Chandi of Kavikangan and of the Annadamangala, the ballad of Monosha, the goddess of snakes. What are they but paeans of the triumph of evil? The burden of their song is the defeat of Shiva, the good, at the hands of the cruel, deceitful, criminal Shakti. End quote. Quote, the male deity who was in possession was fairly harmless, but all of a sudden a feminine deity turns up and demands to be worshipped in his stead. That is to say that she insisted on thrusting herself where she had no right. Under what title? Force? By what method? Any that would serve. End quote. So is this insane interpretation of Shakti and Shiva the understanding of Rabindranath or Keshav Chandra Sen? I'm not exactly sure. It seems like it's Rabindranath's understanding. I had no idea that Rabindranath would have been so ignorant of these concepts. Or is it Keshav Chandra Sen's quote? We'll have to double check someday. The deity of, now the quote is over. Now we are going back to what Arthur Avalon is writing. Sir John Woodruff. The deity of peace and renunciation did not survive. Thus he adds that in Europe, the modern cult of Shakti says that the pale, anemic Jesus will not do, but with high pomp and activity, Europe celebrates her Shakti worship. Lastly, the Indians of today, now we are back to Keshav Chandra Sen. Lastly, the Indians of today have set to the worship of Europe's divinity. In the name of religion, some are saying that it is cowardly to be afraid of wrongdoing. Both those who have attained worldly success and those who have failed to attain it are singing the same tune. Both fret at righteousness as an obstacle which both would overcome by physical force. End quote. I am not concerned here with any popular errors that there might be. After all, when we deal with a Shastric term, it is to the Shastra itself that we must look for its meaning. Shakti comes from the root shak, to be able to do, shak. It indicates both activity and capacity, therefore. The world as world is activity. But when we have said that, we have already indicated that it is erroneous to confine the meaning of the term Shakti to any special form of activity. On the contrary, Shakti means both power in general and every particular form of power. Mind is a power, so is matter. Mind is constantly functioning in the form of vritti, reasoning, will and feeling, bhava, such as love, aversion and so forth, are all aspects of mind power in its general sense. Force is power translated to the material plane and is therefore only one and the grossest aspect of Shakti or power, force. But all these special powers are limited forms of the great creative power which is the mother, Ambika, of the universe. Worship of Shakti is not the worship of these limited forms, but it is the worship of the divine will, knowledge and action, the cause of these effects. That Mahashakti is perfect consciousness, Chidrupini, and bliss, Anandamayi, which produces from itself the contracted consciousness, experiencing both pleasure and pain. This production is not at all a whim, it is the nature, Swabhava, of the ultimate. Bliss is love. Okay, now the quote is given. Nirati saya premas padatvam anandatvam. The production, so bliss is love. The production of the universe is, according to the Shakta, an act of love, illustrated by the so-called erotic imagery of the Shastra. The self loves itself, whether before or in creation. The thrill of human love which continues the life of humanity. Okay, the thrill of human love which continues the life of humanity is in an infinitesimally small fragment. Okay, the thrill of human love which continues the life of humanity, meaning sex basically, is an infinitesimally small fragment and faint reflection of the creative act in which Shiva and Shakti join to produce the Bindu, which is the seed of the universe. Okay, so sex is not all of it. That is a minuscule portion of what we are talking about here. I quite agree that the worship of mere force is asuric and, except in a transient sense, futile. Force, however, may be moralized by the good purpose which it serves. The antithesis is not rightly between might and right, but between might in the service of right and might in the service of wrong. Well said. To worship force merely is to worship matter. He, however, who worships the mother in her material forms, Sthula Rupa, will know that she has others and will worship her in all such forms. He will also know that she is beyond all limited forms as that which gives being to them all. We may then say that force is a gross form, is a sthula form of Shakti, but Shakti is much more than that here, iha. And the infinite power of consciousness there, okay? So Shakti, force may be a gross form of Shakti, but Shakti is much more than iha and the infinite power of consciousness there, amutra. It is much more than both these things, here and there, the iha and amutra. This last, the Shakti of worship, is called by the Shastra the Purnaham Bhava, or the experience all I am. So Soham, Saham, Soham is I am he, Saham is I am she, and Purnaham Bhava, or the experience all I am, or I am all. Yeah. She I am, he I am, all I am. So basically I am all, I am he, I am she. These are the three options here. Ah, wow. Now we start Chinachara, okay? Vasishtha and Buddha. Let's see what happened in China. Uh, Friendly Vimana Rishabh is here. How many profiles do you have? Abhay is saying YouTube itna Hindu darshan nahi jhel pa raha. Uh, uh, Bengal desperately needs a Bengali JSD. And the Bhakti traditions that went hand in hand with Shakta traditions. Hmm. It has been subject of debate whether the Tantric Panchatattva ritual with wine and so forth is a product of Buddhism and whether it is opposed to Vedika Dharma. I have not read more than I have read today. This is, I think, the highest I have ever spent reading, more than my board exams. It has been, though, we are concerned with asking whether the wine and stuff has come from Buddhism and whether it is opposed to Vedika Dharma. Some have supposed that these rites originally came from Yellow Asia, penetrated into India, where they received its impress and again made their way to the north to encounter earlier original forms. I have elsewhere put forward some facts which suggest that these rites may be a continuance, though in another form, of ancient Vedic usages in which soma, meat, fish, and purodasa formed a part. Though there are some Maithuna rites in the Vedas, it is possible that the Bengal Shakta ritual, in this respect, has its origin in Chinachara. So, Chinachara doesn't necessarily mean from China, right? Possibly the whole ritual comes therefrom. I have spoken of Bengal because we should distinguish it from other forms of Shakta worship. The matter which is so obscure at present that any definition the matter is so obscure at present that any definite affirmation as to historical origins lacks justification. Most important, however, is the alleged Buddhist connection in the story of Vasishtha to be found in the Tantras. He is said to have gone to Mahachina, Tibet, which according to popular belief is halfway to heaven, because Kailasha is supposedly heaven. Some of the texts bearing on it have been collected in the appendix to the edition of the Tara Tantra, which has been published by the Varendra Anusandhana Samiti. The Tara Tantra opens in chapter 1.2 with the following question of Devi Tara or Mahanila Saraswati. The quote is, quote, "Thou didst speak of the two Kula Bhairavas, Buddha and Vasishtha. Tell me by what mantra they become Siddha." End quote. The same Tantra, chapter 4.10, the Tara Tantra, defines a Bhairava as follows, quote, "He who purifies these five, that is the Panchatattva, and after offering the same to the Devta, partakes thereof, is a Bhairava." End quote. Buddha then is said to be a Kula Bhairava. It is said to be noted that Buddhist tantrics who practice this ritual are accounted Kaulas. Shiva replied, quote, "Janardana, Vishnu, is the excellent Deva in the form of Buddha, Buddharupi." End quote. It is said in the Samayachara Tantra that Tara and Kalika in their different forms, as also Matangi, Bhairavi, Chinnamasta and Dhumavati, belong to the northern Amnaya, which we had discussed yesterday. The 6th chapter of the Sammohana Tantra mentions a number of scriptures of the Bauddha class, together with others of the Shakta, Shaiva, Vaishnava, Saura and Ganapatya classes. Vasishtha is spoken of in the 17th chapter of the Rudra Yamal and the first Patala of the Brahma Yamal. The following is the account in the former tantric scripture. Vasishtha, the self-controlled, the son of Brahma, practiced for ages severe austerities in a lonely spot. For 6,000 years he did sadhana, but still the daughter of the mountains did not appear to him. Meaning Parvati, I guess. Becoming angry, he went to his father and told him his method of practice. He then said, "Give me another mantra." Parvat, right? "O Lord, since this Vidya mantra does not grant me Siddhi, otherwise in your presence I shall utter a terrible curse." Dissuading him, Brahma said, "O son, who art learned in the yoga path, do not do so. Do thou worship her again with wholehearted feeling, when she will appear and grant you boons. She is the supreme Shakti. She saves from all dangers. She is lustrous like 10 million suns, sun sun. She is dark blue, Neela. She is cool like 10 million moons. She is like 10 million lightning flashes. She is the spouse of Kala, Kala Kamini. She is the beginning of all. In her there is neither dharma nor adharma. She is in the form of all. She is attached to pure Chinachara. Shuddha Chinachara. Shuddha Chinachara. Chinachara Rata. Shuddha Chinachara Rata. That is her name. Because she is attached to pure Chinachara. She is initiator, Pravartika of Shakti Chakra. Her greatness is infinitely boundless. She helps in the crossing of the ocean of the samsara. She helps in the crossing of the ocean of the samsara. She is Buddheshwari, possibly Buddhishwari, Lord of Buddhi. She is Buddhi, intelligence. She is intelligence and Buddhi itself, Buddhi Rupa. She is in the form of the Atharva branch of the Vedas. Atharva Veda Sakhini. Numerous Veda Shakhini. Numerous Shastric references connect the Tantra Shastra with the Atharva Veda. See in this connection my citation from Shakti Sangama Tantra in Principles of Tantra, the 2 volume which I will buy someday. She protects the beings of the worlds. Her action is spread throughout the moving and motionless. Worship her, my son. Be of good cheer. Why so eager to curse? Thou art the jewel of kindness. O son, worship her constantly with thy mind, Chetas, with your Chetas. Being entirely engrossed in her, thou of a surety shalt gain sight of her. If you constantly worship her by your Chetas, being entirely engrossed in her, you will surely gain sight of her. Having heard these words of his Guru and having bowed to him again and again, the pure one, Vasishtha, versed in the meaning of Vedanta, betook himself to the shore of the ocean. For full 1,000 years he did japa of her mantra. Still he received no message, Adesha. Thereupon the Muni Vasishtha grew angry, and being perturbed of mind, prepared to curse the Mahavidya, Devi. Having sipped water, Achmana, he uttered a great and terrible curse. Thereupon Kuleshwari, lady of the Kaulas, Mahavidya, appeared before the Muni. She who dispels the fear of the yoginis said, How now, Vipra? Are Vipra. How now, Vipra, why have you terribly cursed without cause? Thou dost not understand my Kulagama, nor knowest how to worship. How by mere yoga practice can either man or deva get sight of my lotus feet? My worship, dhyana, is without austerity and pain. My worship is without austerity, my dhyana is without austerity and pain. To him who desires my Kulagama, who is Siddha in my mantra, and knows my pure Vedachara, my sadhana is pure, punya, and beyond even the Vedas. Vedanama Pyagochara. This does not mean unknown to the Vedas or opposed to them, but something which surpasses the Vedic ritual of the Pashu. Meaning of Pashu we discussed yesterday. This is made plain. This is absolutely clear. Has been explained clearly by the following injunction to follow the Atharva Veda. Go to Mahachina, Tibet, and the country of the Bauddhas, and always follow the Atharva Veda. Bauddha Deshe Tharva Veda Mahachine Sadabraja. Having gone there and seen my lotus feet, which are Mahabhava, the great blissful feeling which in her true nature she is, Mahabhava, thou shalt, O Maharshi, become versed in my Kula and a great Siddha. Having so said, she became formless and disappeared in the ether and then passed through the ethereal region. The great Rishi, having heard this from the Mahavidya Saraswati, went to the land of China, where Buddha is established, Buddha Pratisthita. Having repeatedly bowed to the ground, Vasishtha said, Protect me, O Mahadeva, who art the imperishable one in the form of Buddha, Buddha Rupa. I am the very humble Vasishtha, the son of Brahma. My mind is ever perturbed. I have come here, China, for the sadhana of the Mahadevi. I know not the path leading to Siddhi. Thou knowest the path of the Devas. Seeing, however, thy way of life, Achara, doubts assail my mind. Bhyani Shanti me hridi, because the extraordinary ritual to him. He saw the extraordinary ritual with wine and woman. Destroy them, and my wicked mind, which inclines to Vedic ritual, Vedagamini. Okay, destroy them and my wicked mind, which inclines to Vedic ritual, Vedagamini, that is the ordinary Pashu ritual. O Lord, in thy abode there are forever rites which are outside Veda, Veda Vahishkrita, that is the Vedic ritual and what is consistent with Veda, as Vasishtha then supposed. How is it that wine, meat, woman, Angana are drunk, eaten, and enjoyed by naked Digambara Siddhas who are high, Vara, and awe inspiring, Raktapano Dhyata? They drink constantly and enjoy or make enjoy beautiful woman. Muhurmuhu Prapivanti Ramayanti Varanganam. Muhurmuhu is a word colloquially used in Bengali even today. With red eyes they are ever exhilarated and replete with flesh and wine. Sada Mangsa Savai. Sada Mangsa Savai Purna. They are powerful to favor and punish. They are powerful to favor and punish. They are beyond the Vedas. Vedasya Gochara. They enjoy wine and women. Madhya Stri se Vanerata. Vasishtha merely saw the ritual sacrifice. Thus spoke the great yogi, having seen the rites which are outside the Veda Vahishkrita. Then bowing low with folded hands, he humbly said, how can inclinations such as these be purifying to the mind? How can there be siddhi without Vedic rites? Mana pravritti retasu katham bhavati pavani kathang va jayate siddhir Veda karyang vina prabho. Buddha said, O Vasishtha, listen the while I speak to thee of the excellent Kula path, by the mere knowing of which one becomes in a short time like Rudra himself. I speak to thee in brief the Agama, which is the essence of all and which leads to Kula Siddhi. First of all, the Veera, the hero, should be pure, Suchi. Buddha here states the conditions under which only the rites are permissible. His mind should be penetrated with discrimination, viveka. Discrimination is viveka. And freed of all pashu bhava, state of an uninitiate pashu or animal man. Let him avoid the company of the pashu and remain alone in a lonely place, free from lust, anger, and other passions. He should constantly devote himself to yoga practice. He should be firm in his resolve to learn yoga. He should ever tread the yoga path and fully know the meaning of the Veda. Vedarthani Puno Mahan. In this way, the pious one, Dharmatma, of good conduct and largeness of heart, Audarya, should by gradual degrees restrain his breath, and through the path of breathing compass the destruction of mind. Following this practice, the self-controlled Vashi becomes yogi. Vashi means self-controlled. In slow degrees of practice, the body firstly sweats. This is the lowest stage, Adhama. The next is middling, Madhyama. Here there is trembling, Kampa. In the third or highest, Para stage, one is able to levitate, Bhumi Tyaga. By the attainment of Siddhi in Pranayama, one becomes a master in Yoga. Having become a yogi by practice or Kumbhaka, restraint of breath, he should be Mauni, given over to silence and full of intent, devotion, Ekanta Bhakti to Shiva, Krishna and Brahma. The pure one should realize by mind, action and speech that Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva are restless like the moving air. Vaya Vigati Chanchala. Perhaps the transient nature of these devatas as compared with the supreme Shakti is indicated. Okay? Compared to Shakti, these devatas are transient, that is being hinted at here. The man of steady mind should fix it on Shakti, who is consciousness, Chidrupa. Thereafter, the mantrin should practice Mahavira Bhava. the feeling of the great hero, and follow the Kula path, the Shakti chakra, the Vaishnava the Vaishnava sattva okay, and follow the okay. Thereafter, the mantrin should practice Mahavira bhava and follow the Kula path, the Shakti chakra, the Vaishnava sattva chakra, and Navavigraha, and should worship Kula Katyayani, the excellent one, the Pratyaksha Devata, that is the deity who responds to prayer, who grants prosperity and destroys all evil. She is consciousness, Chidrupa. She is the abode of knowledge, Jnana, and is consciousness and bliss, lustrous as 10 million lightnings, of whom all tattvas are the embodiment, Chidrupa. She is the abode of knowledge, Jnana, and is consciousness and bliss, of whom all tattvas are embodiment, lustrous as 10 million lightnings, who is Rodri with 18 arms, fond of wine and mountains of flesh. The text is Shiva Mangsa Chala Priyam, but the first word should be Sura. Man should do japa of the mantra, taking refuge with her and following the Kula path. Who in the three worlds knows a path higher than this? By the grace gained therein, the great Brahma himself became the creator. The great Brahma himself became the creator, and Vishnu, okay? By the grace gained therein, the great Brahma himself became the creator, and Vishnu, whose substance is Sattva Guna, the object of adoration of all, highly deserving of worship, the great and lord of Yajurveda, became able to protect. By it, Hara, the lord of Vedas, the wrathful one, lord of wrath and of mighty power, became the destroyer of all. By the grace of Virabhava, the Dikpalas, protectors of the quarters, became like unto Rudra. By a month's practice, power to attract is attained. Akarshana Siddhi. In 2 months, one becomes the lord of speech. In 4 months, one becomes like unto the. In 4 months, one becomes like unto the Dikpalas. In 5 months, one becomes the 5 arrows, probably masters the 5 Tanmatras. And in 6 months, he becomes the Rudra himself. The fruit of this method, Achara, is beyond all others. This is Kala Marga. There is nothing which surpasses it. If there be Shakti, the Vipra becomes a complete yogi by 6 months' practice. Without Shakti, even Shiva can do nothing. What then shall we say of men of small intelligence? Having said this, he whose form is Buddha Rupi, made him practice sadhana. He said, O Vipra, do thou serve Mahashakti. Do thou serve Mahashakti. Do thou practice sadhana with wine, Madhya sadhana, and thus shalt thou get sight of the lotus feet of Mahavidya. End quote. Vasishtha, having heard these words of the Guru and meditating on Devi Saraswati, went to the Kula Mandapa to practice the wine ritual, Madhira sadhana, and having repeatedly done sadhana with wine, meat, fish, parched grain, and Shakti, he became a complete yogi, Purna yogi. A similar account is given in the Brahma Yamala. There are some variants, however. Thus, while in the Rudra Yamala, Vasishtha is said to have resorted to the shore of the ocean. Okay, Vasishtha is said to have resorted to the shore of the ocean. In the Brahma Yamal, he goes to the Kamakhya, the great tantric Pitha and shrine of the Devi. The prevalence of herd worship amongst the Mongolian Assamese is noteworthy. It may be here added that this Yamal states that, except at time of worship, wine should not be taken, nor should the Shakti be unclothed. By violation of these provisions, life, it says, is shortened and man goes to hell. According to the account of the Brahma Yamala, Vasishtha, complaining of his ill success, was told to go to the Blue Mountains, Nilachala, and worship Parameshwari near Kamakhya, Kamrup in Assam. He was told that Vishnu in the form of Buddha Rupi, Vishnu as Buddha Rupi alone knew this worship according to Chinachara. This is interesting. कि कामरूप में जाके क्या करना है वो अकेले विष्णु को पता है, when he is there in Buddha Roop, according to Chinachara. Devi said, without Chinachara, you cannot please me. Go to Vishnu, who is Udbodha Rupi, illumined, and Udbodha. Bodh se buddhi. Bodha, Buddha. And worship me according to the achara taught by him. Vasishtha then went to Vishnu in the country Mahachina, which is by the side of the Himalaya, Himavat Parshve, a country inhabited by great sadhakas and thousands of beautiful and youthful women whose hearts were gladdened with wine and whose minds were blissful with enjoyment, vilasa. They were adorned with clothes which inspired love, Sringara Vesa, and the movement of their hips made tinkle their girdles of little bells. Free of both fear and prudish shame, they enchanted the world. They surround Ishvara and are devoted to the worship of Devi. Vasishtha wondered greatly when he saw him in the form of Buddha, Buddharupi, with eyes drooping from wine. What, he said, is Vishnu doing in his Buddha form? This achara is opposed to Veda. Vedavada Viruddha. I do not approve of it. Asammato mama. Whilst so thinking, he heard a voice coming from the ether saying, O thou who art devoted to good acts, think not like this. This achara is of excellent result in the sadhana of Tarini. She is not pleased with anything which is the contrary of this. If thou dost wish to gain her grace speedily, then worship her according to Chinachara. Hearing this voice, Vasishtha's hair stood on end, and he fell to the ground. Being filled with exceeding joy, he prayed to Vishnu in the form of Buddha. Buddha, who had taken wine, seeing him, was greatly pleased and said, Why have you come here? Vasishtha, bowing to Buddha, here to learn is saying Buddhism went from India to China, right? Then why here it seems to come from China to India? Because according to Arthuravalon, he's saying it was a cycle. First it came from Mahachin, basically, or basically the North Bengal to Bhutan area, perhaps. Then came to Bengal, then went back to from the other side, UP, Nepal border, then Tibet again. And not, according to Rajarshi Nandi at least, not everything was here and not everything of there is there. There was an exchange going on. Like Rajarshi Nandi was saying that he's pretty sure that at least Ma Tara has definitely come from Buddhist Tantra. Buddha, who had taken wine. But remember, this Buddha is not really Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, okay? These are all, even this Buddha is basically a characteristic. This is a roop. Buddha, who had taken wine, seeing him, was greatly pleased and said, Why have you come here? Vasishtha, bowing to Buddha, told him of his worship of Tarini. Buddha, who is Hari and full of knowledge, Tattva-jnana, spoke to him of the 5 makaras. M, that is the 5 commencing with the letter M are Madhya or wine and so forth, which are in Chinachara. Magyanam Chinachara Dikaranam, saying that this should not be disclosed. A common injunction as regards this ritual and renders it. This is a common injunction as regards this ritual and renders it from the opponent's standpoint suspect. By practicing it, thou shalt not again sink into the ocean of being. It is full of knowledge of the essence. It is full of knowledge of the Tattva-jnana and gives immediate liberation, mukti. He then goes on to explain a principal feature of this cult, namely its freedom from the ritual rules of the ordinary worship above which the sadhaka has risen. It is mental worship. In it, bathing, purification, japa and ceremonial worship is by the mind only. No outward acts are necessary. The bathing and so forth is in the mind and not in actual water, as is the case in lower and less advanced worship. There are no rules as to auspicious and inauspicious times or as to what should be done by day and by night. Nothing is pure or impure. There is no ritual defect or impurity. nor prohibition against the taking of food. Devi should be worshipped even though the worshipper has had his food, and even though the place be unclean. Woman, who is her image, meaning Devi's image, should be worshipped. Pujanam striya, and never should any injury be done to her. Stri dveso naiva kartavya. द्वेष, ओके, द्वेष नहीं करना है कभी भी. स्त्री द्वेषो नैव कर्तव्य, दैट इज योर ड्यूटी टू नेवर हार्म हर और इंज्योर हर. कभी भी द्वेष नहीं करना है. Are we here dealing with an ancient incident in which Shakyamuni or some other Buddha of Buddhism was concerned? According to Hindu belief, the Ramayana was composed in the Treta age, and Vasishtha was the family priest of Dasharatha and Rama. As mentioned in Adikanda 7.45 and 7.6, Ayodhya Kanda 5.1. The Mahabharata was composed in Dwapara. Krishna appeared in the Sandhya between this and the Kali Yuga. Both Kurukshetra and Buddha were in the Kali Yuga. According to this chronology, Vasishtha, who was the guru of Dasharatha, was earlier than Shakyamuni. Yeah. There were, however, Buddhas before the latter, exactly what I said. The text does not mention Shakyamuni or Gautama Buddha. According to Buddhistic tradition, there were many other Buddhas before him, such as Dipankara, a Bengali, the famous Atish Dipankar. So him such as Dipankara, the luminous one, Krakuchanda, and others, the term Buddha being a term applicable to the enlightened, whoever he be. जिसका बुद्धि जन्मा हुआ है उसको हम बुद्धा कह सकते हैं, और उसका कैरेक्टरिस्टिक है बौद्ध. लाइक जो आदमी कुटिल है, वो कुटिल होने का एडजेक्टिव क्या है? वो है कुटिल होने का कैरेक्टरिस्टिक है उसका कौटिल्य. Therefore, Kautilya is not the name. The name is Vishnugupta. Okay. Chanakya is also probably an adjective because the word sounds like that. Kautilya. In Bengali we would call it Kautillo. Kutillo ke Kautillo. Okay, so Kautillo is the adjective. I don't know what Chanok means. That probably is the adjective. Therefore, then his characteristic is being like Chanak or being Chanak. Therefore, his Chanakya. His Chanakness is Chanakya. His Kutilness is Kautilya. And therefore Bauddha. The term Buddha being a term applicable to the enlightened, whoever it be. It will no doubt be said by the Western Orientalists that both these Yamals were composed after the time of Shakyamuni. But if this be so, their author or authors as Hindus would be aware that according to Hindu chronology, Vasishtha antedated Shakyamuni. Apart from the fact of there being other Buddhas, according to Hinduism, types as distinguished from forms of various things, ideas and faiths are persistent, though the forms are variable, just as is the case that with the Platonic ideas or eternal archetypes. In this sense, neither Veda, Tantra Shastra nor Buddhism had an absolute beginning at any time. As types of ideas or faiths, they are beginningless, anadi. Though the forms may have varied from age to age, and though perhaps some of the types may have been latent in some of the ages, okay? And though perhaps some of the types may have been latent in some of the ages, okay? Some types may have gotten hidden, might have been a little they did not get too much of a voice in some particular eras. If the Vedas are anadi, so are the Tantra Shastra. It doesn't have a beginning. Chanakya means son of Chanak. Okay. If the Vedas are anadi, so are the Tantra Shastras. To the yogic vision of the Rishi, which makes latent things patent, variable forms show their hidden types. Okay, variable forms show their hidden types. Nothing is therefore absolutely new. A Rishi in the Treta Yuga will know that which will apparently begin in Kali or Dwapara, but which is already really latent in his own age. Vishnu appears to his vision as the embodiment of that already latent but subsequently patent cult. Moreover, in a given age, what is latent in a particular land, say Aryavarta, may be patent in another, say Mahachina. In this way, according to the Hindu Shastra, there is an essential conservation of types subject to the conditions of time, place and person. Deshakala Patra. Moreover, according to these Shastras, the creative power is a producing principle. This means that the world process is cyclic according to a periodic law. The process in one kalpa is substantially repeated in another, and Vasishtha, Buddha, and the rest appeared not only in the present but in previous grand cycles or kalpas. Just as there is no absolute first beginning of the universe, so nothing under the sun is absolutely new. Vasishtha therefore might have remembered past Buddhas as he might have foreseen those to come. In yogic vision, both the past and the future can project their shadows into the present. Both the past and the future can project their shadows into the present. Every Purana and Samhita illustrates these principles of yogic intuition backwards and forwards. To the mind of, actually, even Nietzsche was concerned with this. To the mind of Ishvara, both past and future are known, and so it is to such who, in the necessary degree, partake of the qualities of the Lord's mind, even for them, both past and future are known. The date upon which a particular Shastra is compiled is, from this viewpoint, unimportant. Even a modern Shastra may deal with ancient matter. In dealing with apparent anachronisms in Hindu Shastra, it is necessary to bear in mind these principles. This, of course, is not the view of Oriental scholars or of Indians whom they have stampeded into regarding the beliefs of their country as absurd, their own country as absurd. It is, however, the orthodox view. And as an Indian friend of mine to whose views I have referred has said, quote, what the Psychic Research Society of the West is conceding to good mediums and subjects cannot be withheld from our ancient supermen, the rishis, end quote. The peculiar features to be noted of this story are these. Vasishtha must have known what the Vedas and Vedic rites were, as ordinarily understood. He is described as Vedantavit. Yet, he was surprised on seeing Chinachara rites and disapproved of them. He speaks of it as outside Veda, Veda Vahishkrita, and even opposed to it, Vedavada Viruddha. On the other hand, the connection with Veda is shown in that the Devi who promulgates this achara is connected with the Atharva Veda. And what a great debate is going on with the concept is basically steel manning itself, the opponent's argument also giving great points. A beautiful debate going on with itself. So you see, when Vasishtha is first seeing Chinachara, he's very much opposed to it. He thinks it is Veda Vahishkrita, and he himself is opposed to it, Vedavada Viruddha. But on the other hand, he is being convinced by Devi herself, who is saying that this achara is connected with the Atharva Veda and directs Vasishtha always to follow the Veda. So this text might have been to convince people, or that when that amalgamation process was going on, saying that no, don't worry, Chinachara is also a part of Vedika Dharma. And directs Vasishtha always to follow that Veda, and speaks of the Achara not as being opposed to, but as something so high as to be beyond the ordinary Vedic ritual. Veda Nampya Gochara. Veda Nampya Gochara. Nampya Agochara. He is to be fully learned in the import of Veda, Vedartha Nipuno. It was by the grace of doctrine and practice of Chinachara that Vishnu became the Lord of Yajurveda. I see. It was by the doctrine and practice of Chinachara that Vishnu became the Lord of Yajurveda. The meaning therefore appears to be that the doctrine and practice lie implicit in the Vedas but go beyond what is ordinarily taught. Vishnu therefore says that it is not to be disclosed. What meaning again are we to attach to the word Vishnu Buddha Rupa? Vishnu Buddha Rupa. Buddha means enlightened, but here a particular Buddha seems indicated, though Vishnu is also spoken of as Udbodha Rupi and the Devi as Buddheshwari. The Tara Tantra calls him a Kula Bhairava. As is well known, Buddha was an incarnation of Vishnu. Vasishtha is told to go, the Buddha who is the reincarnation of Vishnu, even that Buddha is not Siddhartha Gautama, remember. Vedanampya Gochara seems to mean beloved of the Vedas and who understands them. And here it is said that it is something so high as to be beyond the ordinary Vedic ritual. The Acharya is not being opposed to, but is so high to be beyond the ordinary Vedic ritual. Okay, so basically the process of amalgamation is going on between Chinachara and Vedic Dharma. Buddha means enlightened, but here a particular Buddha seems indicated, though Vishnu is also spoken of as Udbodha Rupi and the Devi as Buddheshwari. The Tara Tantra calls him a Kula Bhairava. Buddha is called, not Siddhartha Gautama, some Buddha is called Kula Bhairava in the Tara Tantra. As is well known, Buddha was an incarnation of Vishnu. Vasishtha is told to go to Mahachina by the Himalaya and the country of the Bauddhas, Bauddha Desha. Let me underline this. Buddha is Kula Bhairava in Tara Tantra. But according to Rajarshi Nandi, at least, Matara is a concept of Buddhism itself, but that so-called, which has come from Buddhism, but that Tara Tantra is calling him Kula Bhairava. See the exchange going on, exchange of ideas, the amalgamation going on. Everyone is accommodating everyone, everyone is accepting everyone. Now, Vasishtha is told to go to Mahachina by the Himalaya, by the side of the Himalaya and the country of the Bauddhas, Bauddha Desha. The Bauddhas who follow the Panchatattva ritual are accounted Kolas, which is the highest. It is a noteworthy fact that the flower of the Devi is Jaba, Bengali Jaba Phul, the scarlet hibiscus or China rose. As the last name may indicate, it is perhaps not indigenous to India but to China. Hence, whence it may have been imported possibly through Nepal. This legend, incorporated as it is in the Shastra itself, seems to me of primary importance in determining the historical origin of the Panchatattva ritual. Oh. Punjabis are not deluded. They know that whatever they are doing, that will get them some things that they want unfairly. They are just showing off their strength of unity. They are basically an Abrahamic faith at this point. They think like Abrahamics. So they have a linear theory of social evolution at this point. Now, the Tantra Shastra in China. Let's see how big this chapter is. This was a fascinating chapter. We learned so much and it was a deep investigation. It was tough to read, but great things were found out. Okay, Tantra Shastra in China and Tibetan Tantra. I hope we are able to finish all this. Yeah. Then next chapter is Shakti in Taoism. Wow. Nice. We have great things to discuss. Okay. Have you heard the song by Dohar, Ekbar Nacho Ma, যেমন করে নেচেছিলে মা যশোদার ঘরে regarding Krishnakali? No, I have not heard it. The Tantra Shastras in China. Adopting for the purpose of this essay and without discussion as to their accuracy, the general views of Orientalists. No, let's then continue this the next day, okay? Because we'll need a lot of energy to discuss this. And since there is a lot to discuss on the similar topic, that Tantra Shastra in China, Tantra Shastra in Tibet, Tibetan Tantra, then Shakti in Taoism as well, okay? So we will do all this most probably tomorrow night only, okay? Let's hope nothing comes up. Well, I'll end the live stream now then. Thank you for joining. Hindutva by Basu, next part when more Bengalis subscribe to that channel, because so far not too many people have subscribed to that channel, because not many are getting the notification when I'm sharing it in my community tab. So I don't want anyone to miss out on the book. That's why I'm not discussing it as of yet. I'm waiting for more people to subscribe, okay? Okay. Good night, guys. Thank you for joining the live stream.